case starts with a 911 call. This case is no exception. This 911 call originated from within a courthouse in Kentucky. This involves a sheriff and his sidearm, the judge and his chambers, who was eliminated by the sheriff. See, the sheriff was after him for something he may have done to his daughter, and he didn't like this and he didn't like that, so the sheriff did his talking with a gag. All that and what it means for your weekend on the Comm Center.
Oh, wake up, America. It's the Comm Center with Drew Breezy. It's a TV show on the internet about two best friends who are called by a small town sheriff about a life-changing and terminal display of awesome lethality inside a judge's chambers and what would turn out to be my most accurate intro ever.
Whoa.
Drew, how are you doing tonight?
I couldn't be better, I don't think.
Guys,
I pulled it together at the last minute.
You pulled it together at the last minute. Guys, Drew Breezy's our host. He's an actual cop. He was a policeman officer for just one day short of 29 years or something. Made detective on the last day. I'm John. I'm an actual 911 dispatcher. I've been doing that almost 10 years, but not quite 10 years. I can't quite say that yet. You're listening and watching the Comm Center with Drew Breezy. We got an interesting case tonight. Drew, I have to ask you before we start. You do have many twists and turns and surprises on this case, but I want to know. There's so much going on with this. It's bound to be an interesting true crime case that we're probably going to follow for all of 2025. Last year, we followed Amanda Nediger, then we made our way into Hannah Payne and finished off strong with some Sarah Boone. I'm excited, first of all, to be interested in a male suspect for once. But there's so much that's not really known yet about this case because it's just happening. I know you hate when armchair detectives and people who think that they can just watch an episode of Unsolved Mysteries and then they think they can do your job. Are we going to be okay with some rampant, irresponsible true crime podcast style speculation, or are we just going to reserve all the known facts until we know them, or what would you prefer we do here?
I think that's the space we're living in right now. That what we do anywhere in the podcast sphere or in the YouTube verse is just all pretend. And nobody has any authenticity anymore because you don't need it. You just need some pretty eyelashes, and you don't need intelligence or anything to make an impact. So I would hope that we would just speculate.
If you don't need intelligence, I'm going to do fine. So I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, look, there are many twists and turns in this, and I didn't. It's just to be clear and honest, I didn't know where to start with this, where to end with it. I think we're going to go with two parts in this thing. So let's just get right into it. Like, there's a feast for the eyes, but this is more of a Mr. Toad's Wild Ride if you are a Disney aficionado.
I'm not, but let's go ahead and start the case.
Okay,
I've never been there. I'm not allowed to go there.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I was trespassed as well. So are you going to start it, or am I, or how are we going to?
I'll have you control it because you kind of know what's going on with it. It's like Christmas for me all over again. There's a little package over there, and I don't know how to open it, or if there's bees inside of it, or what.
Could possibly be. Okay, so did you fix?
I'm bad at this. There you go. We got it now.
You're actually good at it. All right, so what we're talking about is Letcher County, Kentucky. You can see that it's on the extreme eastern border of Kentucky. That borders with Virginia, West Virginia. There's parts that border with Tennessee, like maybe not the county.
I got emergency at the courthouse. I need ambulance here right now. District courtroom.
Which courthouse?
Court. Letcher County.
And what's going on?
Judge has been shot.
The judge?
Yes.
What's his name?
Kevin Mullins.
Video evidence from the trial shows former Letcher County Sheriff Sean Mickey Stines point his gun directly at District Judge Kevin Mullins.
All right, so if you'll notice one thing here, the news kind of, we're using something from Fox 56, which is a Kentucky station, and they cut out the SHOTS, which is good for us. So it just, but you'll get the idea. Like they pause it when he does the first volley, then he comes around the desk, he does another volley. You'll see the judge. What I found astonishing, John, was the judge was sitting at his desk with a cig. He had a cig in his hand. So this is already starting off kind of like this is not your daddy's judge's chambers, right?
This is a very, very cool judge. This seems like a case I'm going to love doing all year long if the judge is in his chamber smoking a cigarette. And of course, just to make sure we're all on the same page, the big question is, what the hell happened here? I'm very excited, Drew. Go ahead.
Mullins is seen on the ground with his hands up and turned away from Stines before the shots were fired. Stines has been charged with murder in the September 19th shooting of Mullins. The next step in the trial is for a grand jury to consider whether to indict Stines.
All right, so let's stop for a second. Let me explain a few things of what you just saw.
He really meant it.
He really meant it. That guy was the sheriff. He was the sheriff of Letcher County. These two had lunch just before this incident. Okay, so they're friends. They've been friends for a long time.
They worked together. The sheriff had been his bailiff before that.
The sheriff was his bailiff before that, and he was also in another position, which we'll talk about in a minute. There's a bunch of twists and turns at the end of this thing. Hopefully you'll stick around. So the sheriff at some point, and this used to be available widely, but I can't find it anywhere anymore mysteriously, which is fine because I respect the judge's family as well. At some point, in the surveillance video, just mind you, this is surveillance video from the judge's chamber. So he's sitting there with a cig in his hand, and the sheriff asked to look at his phone. And he looks at his phone. I guess the sheriff had made a phone call to his daughter, which is part of the twist ending, I think. We don't know yet. He asked to make a phone call to his daughter, or he made a phone call to his daughter, and then he asked the judge, let me see your phone. And he looks at his phone, and this is what was like right before all of this started happening. So this bizarre, he pulls out the gun, and the judge just kind of has got a cig in one hand, and he's kind of defending himself in the other. Then you see he gets shot once, or multiple times, I don't know, because it's cut out. Then he goes in between the wall and the desk and tries to take cover. There's a campaign sign of some other individual in there that he kind of hides behind, which is, I don't know. I think maybe a campaign, some type of violation. I don't know. Maybe not. You know, like I'm sure that has nothing to do with anything at this point. But I don't know that you're allowed to have campaign stuff in a place like that. So he's ducking behind. You see the sheriff take a few more shots. And then you see the sheriff getting ready to leave. He flings the door open, but he looks down where the judge is. You could see that the judge had been kicking the desk out, so he was still kind of kicking and screaming. And the sheriff, unfortunately, lunged forward and took a few more shots to make sure that he finished his job. And from testimony, not from any video source or whatsoever, from what I understand, the judge walked into the courtroom itself, laid down his gun, and put his hands up and said, y'all be fair. You know, you guys be fair with me. So that's kind of where we're at right now with this. We'll see what the other news sources have said.
I've listened to what his attorney has said, and I think the attorney is not trying to make a case that this didn't happen. I think we're way past that. The attorney was already making statements to the effect of extreme emotional distress, heat of the moment. So in criminal law, there's going to be a huge difference between someone who's in an agitated or excited state of mind, and at the moment they pull the trigger, they don't know the difference between the rightness and the wrongness of their actions. Now, we've talked about this a lot. We've talked about it a lot with the Menendez brothers, whether or not they knew what they were doing was right or wrong because of the amount of planning that went into that and the amount of behavior that went on in the family. That was huge for that speculation. We talked about it with Hannah Payne, her intent. And we talked about it with Sarah Boone. What was her intention? Well, George was dying in the suitcase. So what is going on in the mind of a killer at the moment of the killing is huge. Now, he's already been charged with murder. I think that video heard. But if the defense can make a strong case that he was emotionally disturbed at the time that he attacked the judge, we could get that knocked down to second degree or manslaughter, right, Drew?
Well, we're gonna get into all that in a second. So let's let it play out a little bit.
Okay.
But unfortunately, I don't have a play button anymore. Okay,
There it is. Go for it.
Present, but when he was taken into custody, I was told by one of the other officers that were there that he made the comment, they're trying to kidnap my wife and kid.
Sitting shackled with his attorney for his preliminary hearing, the last time former Letcher County Sheriff Mickey Stines was in a courtroom, investigators say he shot and killed Judge Kevin Mullins.
I have officers confirm that the sheriff's daughter's phone number was on Judge Mullins' phone.
Yes.
The lead investigator testified, saying Stines and Mullins were alone in the judge's chambers after the two had lunch earlier that day.
I was told that the judge made a statement to Mickey about, do we need to meet private in my chambers?
The investigator says Stines took Mullins' phone and called his own daughter, whose number was in the judge's phone. He says Stines then shot the judge.
Sheriff Stines uses his telephone to make some phone calls. He then borrows Judge Mullins' cell phone and appears to make a call on that. And that led to what you just saw.
Stines' attorney argued that he should be charged with manslaughter.
I've heard nothing that indicates that this is not, an example of an extreme emotional disturbance relative to the phone.
But the judge agreed with the prosecutor there was enough probable cause for a murder charge.
Evidence presented in this court today is that the judge was intentionally shot and killed, shot multiple times by the sheriff, and there's probable cause to find the grand jury murder charge. Yeah, I agree.
DeAndrea Turner, WLKY News.
Okay, we're going to pause for a second. I want to cover a couple things. One being, if you watched, and I think that we'll cover it in depth on the next go around or in the near future. If you watch that Kentucky State Police officer, detective, Clayton Stamper, I think his name is. If you watch his testimony, he's tripped up a few times by the defense attorney because he just has very preliminary information. He doesn't have an in-depth information. He's using a lot of what would normally be called hearsay in a regular trial, but it's allowed in a probable cause hearing. And that's my point. This is a probable cause hearing. It's just probable cause to send this to the grand jury or probable cause that the crime was committed. It's a hearing held in front of the judge because of the severity of the offenses. And you don't need to do the whole investigation. You're not going to try the case at that point. So there were a lot of questions that the defense attorney asked that he didn't have full information for. He probably, should be very, very familiar with what some of the other investigators said, or what the sheriff said, which, arguably he wasn't at times. But the goal for the state or the Commonwealth in this case was to put this in front of the judge and have the judge determine that there was probable cause for this to go to the grand jury. And that was mission accomplished. That's exactly what happened here. A lot of the stuff that the defense did was to get on record, where they are.
Some of the early speculation coming out in the chats is Tanner wants to know if his daughter was sleeping with the judge. Well, sheriff's daughter was a minor, if I recall.
Yep.
So
and as a matter of fact, this is going to be problematic in the case itself, because not only is she a minor child, I think she's 16 or 17, and we don't know. We don't know if there was some kind of inappropriate relationship. You heard what the investigator said. The investigator said that he made a statement, he being the sheriff, that they're trying to kidnap my wife and kid. Now, when we get to this later, in the broadcast, you'll see that there would be a reason why the sheriff was a little bit paranoid. There's some stuff going on in that courthouse. So maybe this wasn't a sexual thing at all, but he did for whatever reason confirm that the daughter's number was in his phone. And that was right before all the bad stuff happened.
Drew, you know how to spin a yarn. I don't want to get in the way. Let's just go back to it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Feel like a cat. Oh, this is the first ever comm center sidebar, John. This is a little surprise I did for you.
I didn't even get invited.
I'm calling it a sidebar. And this is because this is Jeremy Bartley. Is that his name?
I think so.
Okay. Jeremy Bartley is a prominent Eastern Kentucky defense attorney. He was a prosecutor for quite a while. He's been all over the place. He's been on a few podcasts. He's been on a few shows.
He was the dad on Family Ties, wasn't he?
He was, no, I don't think he was. The dad was much taller than that.
Okay.
It's funny you say that though, John, because I'm not sure if that's Jeremy Bartley or if it's comedian Nate Bargatze.
Oh, I love Nate Bargatze. He's hilarious. He's actually my one and only favorite comedian who's still alive because Norm Macdonald has passed away.
Yeah,
it's either Norm Macdonald or Nate Bargatze. That's great.
Okay, so this I saw this and I'm like, the minute I saw it actually when he was examining Clayton Stamper a few weeks ago or whenever it was, I was like, man, that's Nate Bargatze. Why is he on there? So then I did a little digging today, John, and it gets even more weird because there is a co-counsel on this case, and her name is Carrie Bartley. That happens to be the wife of Jeremy Bartley. So it's a husband-wife team. They're in the same law firm. But take a look at them and compare them to Laura and Nate Bargatze. Now, one couple can go as the other couple on any given Halloween.
Well, not only that, but any kind of like identity swap situation where you need someone to sit in for you, going to your daughter's recital. You don't want to be there. Really, if there's ever a show about Carrie and Jeremy Bartley and it's a comedy, which of course it would be, husband and wife duo prosecutors, you could have the Bargatze family.
Defense attorneys.
But I'm not surprised that I thought it was the famous actor Michael Gross from an 80s comedy. I'm a little bit older than you. Yeah, so that's probably
Meredith Baxter Birney's TV husband.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael J. Fox is his TV father.
Mm-hmm.
But so are you saying that Jeremy Bartley could sub out for, say, like if Nate Bargatze got laryngitis, like Jeremy Bartley could be like, and so I checked in the fridge and I that's like the timing of
a closing argument and a stand-up routine are very, very close to the same thing.
Yeah.
Quick story. Just when I was in college, I was in victimology and my professor did not like me, as none of my professors did. But at one point he asked me very angrily, are you going to be a prosecutor or a comedian? And I said, there's no reason why I can't be both. So we're very close here with they're defense attorneys, but I believe that if you give Jeremy Bartley, if you just give him his routine or have him watch the Netflix special 3 or 4 times, he could probably be telling the story about how the guys came to get his door refinished and he had to put on a suit to answer the door. So he could do the whole bit about standing outside for selling the item on Facebook Marketplace for $6. Or how he has to agree to a fake middle name in order to get onto a plane. I am a fan of Nate Bargatze. I'm fastly becoming a fan of Carrie and Jeremy Bartley as well. Yeah. All right. We continue. Serious face. Game face, John. Serious face. So who's who in the case? We're going to talk a little bit about that real quick. So the judge himself is Kevin Mullins. He is a University of Louisville grad. As you know, I spent some time at the University of Louisville myself. Enough to pronounce it correctly. Yep. And he's 54 years old. He was, God rest his soul. I see that there was a little confusion when I kept saying he had a cig in his hand. I meant a cigarette, short for cigarette. That's what I call cigarettes. I mean, it's cig. But not a Sig Sauer firearm. But anyway, Judge Mullins
started out as a prosecutor. He was a district judge who handled cases like juvenile court. He handled, small claims stuff like your Judge Judy kind of, the Judge Joe kind of stuff. Domestic violence cases. He handled mental health issues sometimes, and he did stuff like that. So it turns out that he was a prosecutor. They call them solicitors there. He was appointed as a judge in 2009. He was elected to kind of solidify the position in 2010. So he's been doing this for a while. And there's kind of a sad side note of this whole thing. I mean, obviously the whole thing is sad. This poor guy's, he had a family. Whether there was nefarious activity, it still remains to be seen. But there's no need to smear him now. He's still a family man that was taken from us, and a public servant at that. Heavy into helping people with addictions, because that part of the country is riddled with addictions, left over from the opioid crisis.
It's hard to live in Kentucky.
Yes, it is kind of, and it's rural Kentucky, and I always have a tough time saying that. But so that's who the judge is. Judge Kevin Mullins, 54 years old, living his life. His brother-in-law, I think, was a solicitor in his same courtroom. So he not only knew him as judge, he knew him as his, like they married sisters. And
That's
what we
in Kentucky.
Yeah, and what we no, I mean, like, yeah, and that was good. I didn't even think about that. So then, but here's the thing: when they play, so Clayton Stamper and the state, the Commonwealth, had to play their sole piece of evidence, which is compelling. I mean, it's a guy shooting somebody. I mean, that's
pretty good.
pretty
I think the sheriff did it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as Nate Bargatze or Jeremy Bartley would say, this is not a whodunit. This is a why he did it. So it's sad to watch the hearing because of the wails that you hear, like wails as in crying, not the sea creature, but you just hear these horrible screams. And it's a reminder, like for me, a guy like me, today, by the way, is National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. So it's the kind of like crying or yelling or screaming that you never forget. It's like smelling death. Like once you smell it, you know what death smells like for the rest of your life. And when you hear that wail, when you hear that cry, you know what that sounds like for the rest of your life. And that's what somebody let out in the courtroom when they were playing that.
I heard that.
And so now when you think about it, I mean, it could have been anybody in his family because they had to sit there and try to endure that. Could have been anybody from the courthouse. I mean, they knew this guy, like they worked with him daily. And that brings up the interesting question of, is this sheriff going to get a fair trial if, or is the victim going to get a fair shot at justice if the sheriff of that county is the elected sheriff of that county is being tried in that county? Because I think that's something that's, I don't think it's been like formally recognized or brought forward yet, but they could want to change a venue in this thing. Like he was a pretty popular guy, this sheriff. And when you sit him in front of when you sit him, a jury of his peers are potentially a jury of his constituents that supported him.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, he's literally in his position due to popularity, and there's every chance that anyone who's civically minded enough to be registered to vote, or however they select jurors in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, is very likely to be mindful of that. He did go to the Leslie County Jail, so there was already some consideration up front that when he was taken into custody, he shouldn't be held in the custody of his own men. So they had to drive him for an hour, and I'm sure that we'll get into that a little bit. But
yeah, I would think that.
I would think that you've got to have a change of venue, but you also got to remember he's not the only one who's ever been in this situation before. I would just like to draw a slight comparison and a strong contrast to Deober Redden, who attacked a judge while sitting on the bench, and he ended up getting a fair trial from someone else. I know that the situation is a little different, but it's just kind of funny that in a couple of weeks' time we're talking about multiple judges under attack case.
I think if you don't know who Diablo Redden is, Reddens is, that you probably need to go to our YouTube channel and look at our Diablo Reddens episode. That's the guy that leapt over the bench to attack the poor woman that was the judge. And then he was sentenced to a long time after that in a different trial.
Yep. Now he'll be jumping judges behind bars where he should be.
Right. So that was an excellent callback, John.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So we'll move on because we need to talk a little bit about who this guy is. The next guy that we're going to talk about is the sheriff. His name is Sean Mickey Stines. There is no more Kentucky name than Mickey, in my opinion. They're just outside of Hazard County. I don't know if there was a Mickey on the Dukes of Hazzard. He's 43 years old. He was elected to Letcher County Sheriff in 2018. He was reelected in 2022, and apparently well liked by all accounts. Not only well liked, but everybody that recounted the relationship between the sheriff and the judge said that they were really good friends. They were close. They had just gone to lunch. So,
and I should say that's not always the case.
No,
Sometimes
it's not.
judges and sheriffs are oil and water, and they do not get along at all. So
No.
it's not common. You shouldn't just assume, well, one's a judge and one's a sheriff. Of course, they're going to rub elbows and tee off and go golfing together. It's not always the case.
So with the 2022 scandal that rocked that office, the Letcher County Sheriff's Office, I guess, or department. I don't know if it's an office or a department. But
It's probably inside, which would make it a department.
okay, so there was a 2022 scandal that we're going to get to in a second here. And what happened as we found out, there was a deputy sheriff for that office that worked for that sheriff that was trading sexual activity for favors, for like
she was on
releasing people.
electronic monitoring. She
Yeah.
was kind of under house arrest was her situation. And you have to pay for all that yourself as part of your sentence. It's not just the county that's going to dish that out. So she didn't have the money to pay for it. And they had a deputy who was in charge of electronic monitoring. And he said, you could pay me in other ways. And somehow this did not go on at her house, which I initially thought this went on in the judge's chambers. It's just a regular party place in there.
It actually did initially happen at her house. So there was an issue that came up, and this deputy ended up, Fields, his name is, this deputy went over to her house to, as he said, console her, because I think she was found guilty, and she was lamenting that she couldn't pay for this stuff. And he told her, well, we can probably work something out here. And then you're right. It all turned back to, ironically, the judge's chambers, the same judge. I don't know if it's the same chambers, but it's the same judge that we're talking about here, Judge Mullins. So that's him. So that scandal rocked, and this is the deputy here. Look at him. His name is Ben Fields, not Ben Folds.
I was going to say.
Right.
Very concerned there about what happened to Ben Folds and the Ben Folds 5. Like, I haven't heard from him in a few years. I would hate to think that a fate as sad as becoming a law enforcement officer had befallen.
I think he really, well, I mean, and he's right next door in North Carolina, but I think he was convicted for giving her the Ben Folds 5.
Oh, geez.
All right,
it literally was 6 times, so I don't know what happened that last time.
So he was convicted of a lot of things, but he ended up, and he was found guilty, actually. So he was, let me back that up. He was indicted. The stuff that you see on the screen were what he was indicted for. There's the R word is up there that I can't say on YouTube. So you'll understand, sometimes it's not necessarily a consent thing when a deputy sheriff or when a police officer is charged with the R word. It's by virtue of their position and their authority. Right. So like, you don't have a choice in the matter. Even if you had consensual SECKS, you still commit this this offense if you're acting in your capacity, or you're wearing your gun, or it just depends on some of the things. And
Yeah,
it obviously depends.
It's
on
like
the
in your
state.
workplace. If it happens with your boss, there's a power dynamic there, which makes it it's not equal and it's not okay. And obviously, this is worse because she's under his supervision legally. She's appointed by the court to serve out that sentence. So, and he's got his power vested in him by the state. So,
yep. So he did at the time where. This is exactly what I would think a Letcher County deputy sheriff would look like. I mean, I hate to be that judgy, but I am. I mean, is that
you keep saying Letchery County? It's Letcher County.
I thought I said Letcher County, but is that a V-neck T-shirt or is that just a regular crew neck? So he's got a few buttons, got it down. Like he's the kind of guy that actually puts stuff in that pocket. Like there. Not a lot of people.
Well, he's rolled up his short sleeves. I mean, how hot are you?
Where else is he going to store cigarettes, John? And then he has kind of a beer belly, which I won't, though this is NA beer. I mean, I have my own
he may not be a road deputy, though. Like, let's try to just
no, he was, you're right. He was, I believe he was like a detention.
Yeah, let's just make the detentions and corrections officers guys look bad, not the road deputies.
Some of the most in shape, fit people I know are detention.
And in
deputies,
fairness, the good-looking ones, the ones that take care of their uniform and are professional, are not the ones out there laying pipe with people on electronic monitoring.
Right.
So
giving them the Ben Folds 5 is what we call that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So so that's him. So I think there was a lot of people that had their feathers ruffled because he only served a little bit of time. Like he only got like 15 months in jail, I don't even think he got. I don't even think he got prison time. I think he got
a lot of probation. Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely got probation, which is ironic because he knows how to game the system. If you know what I'm saying.
And now he's on electronic monitoring,
right? But he's not,
and he's willing to pay for it however he can.
He was like, "Oh yeah, give me electronic monitoring, sir. Come on, judge, give me electronic monitoring. I know how to get around this."
Ironically, with the lack of manpower in the sheriff's office, the woman that he abused has now been appointed a deputy.
As sheriff.
As you would have guessed, in Kentucky.
She is
now in charge
now,
of supervising. Right. This is the ultimate turnabout.
She told him we can work something out. So that's him. And let's see where the ride takes us now.
Following Stines' arrest, we found out that he had been deposed in a civil lawsuit in the days leading up to the shooting. A woman named Sabrina Atkins sued the sheriff's office, claiming a deputy named Ben Fields had sex with her while she was on home incarceration.
If I were Ben Fields, I would say, look, I just thought she was a ghost. But listen, this is the whole thing about this case, and what Angenette Levy just told us is that the sheriff was deposed a few days before this incident, the major incident. Okay, so he was deposed in a federal lawsuit. I think, you could make inferences that all of a sudden he realized that his world was crashing down, that maybe he was involved in this sex scandal somehow. Not the case. The lawsuit's widely available. The lawsuit actually occurred in 2022. It's turned into a federal lawsuit, a 1983 claim that, a violation of somebody's civil rights. And what the reason the sheriff was implicated is because it was his employee. So you have a duty or an obligation as the sheriff or as the head of an agency to supervise your people. And when your people act outside the color of law, you are subjected to that same punishment, the same civil punishment, the lawsuit. So she's looking for I don't know. I don't even know what the dollar amount is. She's not, but she gave all of this information in the Fields case. So when they were trying to put together a criminal case back in 2021 or 2022, whatever it was, she provided all of this information about the sheriff and the judge and all this other stuff. He's not really implicated in this. He's definitely being sued over it.
He's probably stressed out a little bit, but I wouldn't take it personally if I was him.
No, and I think that there's way more to the story. But just spoiler alert. I think my theory, my theory is that you'll see a little bit of paranoia in a minute, and it leads me to believe one of two things. One could be methamphetamine use on the sheriff's part.
Aliens.
It could be aliens. Or two, he could legitimately think that based on the deposition and what he heard there, that somebody is trying to snuff him out and take his family out. Or, like he just has this notion that just all of a sudden snowballed. And when you couple that with some kind of mental health breakdown, maybe he, whatever, like he genuinely believes. Now, the thing is also, the attorney Bartley, not Bargatze, Bartley, has said on a podcast that I listened to that this is tip of the iceberg.
Is it tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg?
It's not the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. That's Sarah.
Well, we have to get into a lot of stuff. What are the phones going to say? What's the text messages going to say? And when the sheriff was booked into Leslie County, they would have taken a urine sample from him. So with the drug thing that you just mentioned, I think we're okay. Just because I wanted to say tip of the tip of the tip of the tip, I think it's okay to say that at this time.
Atkins was arrested in 2021 on a drug charge. Atkins claims that she couldn't afford to pay for an ankle bracelet and was afraid to go back to jail. So Fields, who was supervising her on home incarceration, offered to help her in exchange for sex. Atkins said she and Fields had sex in Judge Mullins' chambers 6 times. Fields eventually was charged criminally and served 6 months in jail. He is supposed to be on probation for 6.5 years. We don't know whether this played a role in the shooting, but there have been questions about whether it may have, and here's why. In 2022, investigators with the Kentucky Attorney General's office interviewed Sabrina Atkins, and she claimed to have seen tapes of Judge Mullins having sex with a woman in his chambers.
But he does have some videotapes of some stuff in the judge's chambers.
What kind of stuff?
Just with girls, sexual and stuff.
What describe? Have you seen the videos?
I've seen one partly, and just him having sex with girls for their bail to get out of jail.
Who was having sex?
Ben and just some higher ups up there.
Who?
The judge and.
Now you saw the video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What did you see on the video? I mean, you.
I mean, I've seen Judge Mullins having sex with a girl.
Who was the girl?
I don't know. I don't know a lot of people from over there.
Where was it at?
In his office, in the judge's chambers.
Is that the same place that you were meeting Ben? Is that how you know it was a judge in chambers?
Yeah.
And this was Judge who?
Mullins.
But you don't know who the girl was?
We obtained that audio in a records request from the Kentucky AG's office. News Nation actually was the first to report on the audio.
All right, let me jump in here for a second because
I'm confused. I'm sorry.
They obtained that audio from the AG's office. News Nation beat them to the punch on this. This is Law and Crime Network, by the way, that we're using, Angenette Levy's show, which is great. I think she's great. She's a Cincinnati-based, I think, attorney or was. I personally did a public records request for the 911 call and some other stuff. I have not received that yet, but they have like X amount of days to reply. So
they're probably having a county fair. The deputy in charge of the DVD is currently running the Ferris wheel.
That's a true story. That actually happened to us. It's basically they didn't have any ice because the lady with the recipe died.
Quick question for you, though. I'm not a good listener. How did this woman who was on electronic monitoring or house arrest or however you want to say it, how did she see this happening in the judge's chamber? She wasn't like standing in, the corner. She saw a tape of it?
I saw tapes, she said.
Okay, how'd she get those tapes?
This, Ben Fields 5 must have showed them to her or something. She made reference to that. Okay, like I've seen tapes of, and she's like, there's tapes of him, and they clarified who. She said higher ups, and he said who? Judge. And I don't think we got to the part where she knows how to identify the judge, which I thought was kind of interesting.
She said it in there. She said, I've been in front of him many times.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
She said, I've been sentenced by him a dozen times. I even leapt across his bench once and fought him. But no, I wanted to know how she had seen some tape of some other romantic interlude inside these very, very, very sexy judges' chambers. I'm going to be honest with you, Drew. I watched it at the beginning of the episode. Didn't do anything for me. The light was too bright. I don't know if it smells good in there, but it just doesn't seem that sexy of a place.
The robe, to me, would be kind of a turn
That's
off.
what it was.
Although the gavel, But so
Do you think Ben Folds put on the
it's possible.
little role play?
I think that
being the cop role play is very dull to him. He always wanted to do the judge role play. You always go one level higher. You know what I mean?
she's a brick and she's drowning slowly. So I'm just I'm thinking that when the Attorney General's office did the investigation, which was in 2022, that they had all this information about the judge. They had all this information about the existence of the tapes. So, and that probably became part of the evidence for the Ben Fields 5 trial. So I'm wondering one of two things. If it didn't make it in, then is there some kind of cover up? Who knows? Like, we don't know that. It may have made it in, but obviously this is all public now. So, and two, I can just tell you from experience, we had like this ultra Christian internal affairs detective. You know, he was a very righteous guy, nice enough guy. But we received information that he was actually dealing methamphetamine, and it required us, ironically, my partner and I was in criminal intelligence at the time, which we've discussed before, but this was one of those deemed sensitive by the sheriff investigations. We were sent to West Virginia to track down the guy that actually made this allegation. And we interviewed him extensively, and he was lying. It turns out he was lying. I know it's a shocker.
It always disappoints you. You never got jaded to that. You always wanted to believe.
Yeah, but when meth people tend to project. They tend to like want the cops to be involved in this. They always want the cops to be dirty, or they always think the cops are dirty, or you know what I mean? And I just don't know that there are that many cops willing to deal with meth people. You know what I mean? Because they're very, very paranoid. So I don't know that I've ever seen an allegation from a meth person that has like turned out to be
credible.
So, I mean, you know, she's making these allegations where, yeah, and they may be 100% true. I don't know. But obviously this was enough to convict that deputy. So, you know, she was credible enough for that. And, you know, hopefully she's clean, or she was clean at the time she was giving these interviews to the Attorney General's office. So anyway,
onward.
Onward.
Yeah.
But you just saw the judge. Do you know for sure that was the judge? I mean, how do you know that's the judge?
I'll be in front of him. He's facing.
I jumped over the bench. All right, so here's some actual body cam footage for you, John. This is when
4 p.m. that
I
day.
love that graphic.
Dash cameras show officers leading Mickey Stines out of the courthouse in handcuffs to a waiting cruiser. And then you hear his voice talking with the troopers.
Make sure there ain't no weapons or nothing now. There ain't nothing in there, bro. Yeah. Come on now. Right here, open up the back hatch. Come on.
This is what you call the Sally port.
No, now come on. Y'all gonna leave me in here and let me die of heat exhaustion. No, I can't get up in there. Come on now. Come on. I'm up in there, bro. Nobody's up in there. I can't. Yeah, man, I can't get in. These cuffs are way too tight. Come on now, guys. Come on now.
Stines definitely sounds a little paranoid.
When I first heard her say that, I was just kind of like,
yeah,
no,
I didn't pick up paranoid at all. That's what guys sound like when they're getting arrested.
That's like every fat guy that's been in the back of my patrol car. You know, that's what they say. But I'll give her this. I mean, it's legit. Like, you'll hear, because he starts talking about carbon monoxide poisoning, and he's definitely not in his right frame of mind.
You mean pick your leg up, my brother? Y'all got carbon monoxide in here. Come on now. Come on. I can't.
I hate the thought that an elected sheriff constantly repeats, "Come on now, come on now." I don't. I really this guy does not sound sane at the moment.
Well, he just sounds
I don't
Southern,
know, but
Drew. I mean, you're from the North and you're from Florida, which doesn't
I
really
know
encompass
that.
the South. You know, so again, you were close with Dukes of Hazzard. I would just say watch some of that.
Okay, this is Roscoe P. Coltrane.
Say it like this.
Slide sideways.
I can't. Come on now. Be fair to me.
We're being good to you, brother. You can stick your leg up in there.
Come on now, guys. Please don't do this to me. Please don't do this to me. Please.
You want to scoot on over a little bit to the left?
Come on now.
Try to scoot on over a little bit more. That way we don't hit you. Can you go any bit farther? I just want to hit you with the door. Put your knee in there, my friend.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Bates.
He's calling you.
I know.
Hey, Bates. Can we loosen this up a little, or give
Come on now.
the window down?
I'm sorry.
Can we loosen this up a little? Be fair to me, man.
I got some air. I'll crack the window for you, but I can turn the air on back here. Okay?
Yeah. Be fair to me now.
I promise, Mickey. I promise.
God, please.
I promise. I'll tell you.
It's hot back here, man. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
The famous words of George Floyd.
The drive to the Leslie County Jail from Letcher County takes about an hour, give or take a few minutes. Stines continues to speak, as if he's in fear.
Come on now, guys. Make sure I get to the jail.
At times, it's hard to hear the troopers in the cruiser, but they try to talk to Mickey Stines on the long drive to the jail.
Come on now, guys.
I was asking why you done it. Was it over your family?
Come on now, guys. What are you doing?
I'm just talking to you. I'm just asking, was it something to do with your family or anything like that?
The trooper, after several minutes, tries to ask Stines some more questions.
Was it something to do with your family? Something happened. Something did happen, you know. I mean, it'd be good to let us know.
All right, I'm going to call timeout here. This is a dangerous game because
did they Mirandize him?
I'm pretty sure he's been Mirandized, and if not, I mean, he's, dare I say, he knows that statement's not going to get in. So,
right.
But so here's the thing. When you're dealing with a case of this magnitude, you have a law enforcement officer who has taken the life of a judge, right, on camera, laid his firearm down, put his hands up and said, "Be fair to me." He's short of breath. Do you not think that he's smart enough to know the rules? And do you not think that he would have told you by now if he were in his right mind?
Yeah.
Right. So they're taking advantage of a situation, in my opinion. Now, here's the other thing. If you're going to ask questions in a case of this magnitude to a guy that's like that, don't you want to be across from him looking at his body language? And so I don't know if this is a detective in the backseat with him asking him these questions, or if this is the cop that's driving him to jail. Either way, I think it's pretty risky asking him these questions while you're traveling down the road. You'd probably want him in a more comfortable environment where he could take the handcuffs off and you could sit across the table from him and have a conversation with a purpose, not necessarily kill that guy.
You could also let him calm down a little bit. I mean, you know, whether or not whatever he did was right or wrong, like he's still in a moment of extreme agitation, right? Like kind of let him calm down, get his bearing about him. I almost think they're trying to catch him unawares, right? Just because he's trying to empathize with him or fake empathize with him, like, hey man, if this is about your family,
Yeah.
you know, we're all going to understand
say
that.
that.
But if you say, yes, this was about me protecting my family, that's a confession. You know, that's
Sure.
an admission. That's a statement against interest. And, you know, legal wrangling regarding Miranda aside, you know, that's something that's going to be admitted as evidence against him. And I think, you know, we're talking about whether or not the sheriff is cogent, whether or not he's in his right mind. But they're talking about the carbon monoxide and some other statements that he's going to make. But the smart play by the sheriff here really is to not say anything. So he seems to be acting in his own best interest by not answering the question.
Yeah, but like, even the whole ride here, he's short of breath. He's still saying things like, "Come on now, let's get me there now." Like he's delusional. I think that, you know, Angenette Levy made a great point where she was talking about, like, he really sounds like he's paranoid. I thought it was a little premature to say that, but you know, obviously she had the benefit of seeing the whole thing,
right?
And then you couple that with the statements he's making, and it gets even worse. Like, stick around, you're going to hear a lot more in the second here. But I don't know. Let's just keep playing it, John. Maybe something will shake loose here.
Go for it.
Why did you want to talk to your daughter while ago, Mickey? Something did happen that, you know, involved something. They could help you when you go to trial and get a fair trial. Let us know kind of what's going on, what led to this.
At one point, Sheriff Stines asks whether the troopers are actually taking him to a national forest. He doesn't believe the troopers are taking him to the right place. They tell him there is a national forest near the jail.
Maybe we're almost to the jail. I'll ask one last time. Is there anything you want? Is this anything to do with your family? So maybe that's some information that we need to know. And what kind of information comes out, that always can change how investigations are working. You know what I mean? And how they're looked at. You know that. Like I said, something led to this.
Come on now, guys. Guys, no guys. This is not the jail. This is not the jail now. This is not the jail.
The officers continue to drive, and they assure Mickey Stines they are taking him to the Leslie County Jail.
Okay, Mickey. Anyway, so do you want to talk about it? Is this to do with anything with your family, your daughter, or anything?
So he's not even framing it. Look, I hate Monday morning quarterbacking people because I didn't have the benefit of the whole conversation. I don't know what he was told. I mean, maybe he was told by the lead investigators, hey, get him to talk when you're driving him there. But if he had framed it in the form of, we really need to know if this is about your family, because if they're in danger, we need to get over there and protect them.
Right. We got to get over there. Yeah.
But you know, you're already dealing with a very hot flare gun of a guy who's like, he's already taken somebody out because
he also thinks he's being snuffed out. He says, you're not taking me to the jail. He says, you're, you know, they're driving for those of you who are just listening, they're driving in a picturesque countryside, something straight out of that last chapter of Mice and Men. He thinks that he's going out there to go to the rabbit farm, George. He thinks this is his last ride. So he's worried about what just happened with this judge. He's worried about his family. And even as the Sally Port door opens, he's going to continue to worry, Drew.
Yep. He's going to crush the mouse in his pocket.
Bring one in. Do they have to back out to get out, or does that circle out? Does it circle?
That's the whatever cop is driving him. That's him asking procedurally about the Sally Port.
Yeah,
Sally Port. There's somebody in there, and he's wondering, do they go out the other door and circle around, or are they going to have to back out? So I need to leave clearance.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Who you passing me off to?
Leslie, we've talked about this. This is Leslie County Jail.
Who you passing me off to, though?
No, nobody. He knows the way here. We didn't know the way.
Oh, yeah. Y'all are passing me off here now to somebody.
Convinced. So I did hear a second voice in there. So maybe there was a detective sitting in the back seat with him, but he's convinced. He's like, y'all are passing me off. Y'all are passing me off. Like, this is somebody who's paranoid. This is somebody who's paranoid who is acting paranoid. And I think that he thinks he's being passed out because he's going to be eliminated.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. I meant feds in a very, very negative sense. I didn't mean like, oh, you're remanding me to the custody of the United States Marshals Service. No, like you're getting turned over to the Men in Black. Goodbye, buddy.
Y'all are going to let somebody hurt me. Yeah. Come on now, guys. Be fair. Yeah. Don't pass me off to nobody.
The only people we're passing you off to is the jailers inside here.
Just do that.
That's the jail.
They said there's somebody in there that they got to clear out.
Yeah, come on now, guys.
One last time, the trooper tries to get Stines to tell him whether the shooting had anything to do with his family.
Is this anything to do with your family? I think that's some information that would be nice to be out there so we knew what exactly led to this.
This is a nicer Sally Port.
Don't put me in that Leslie County van.
Stines is pulled out of the cruiser and taken into the jail to be booked. Stines' lawyers released the following statement to me. It says, the recently released footage affirms our belief that our client felt there was an imminent threat to his family and himself. There was an extreme amount of pressure placed upon him as a result of the pending civil case and its potential to reveal matters within the courthouse. The footage shows that our client perceived a genuine threat, and its impact upon his mental health is apparent.
Is that the end of the show?
Yes.
That's the end. So we're waiting for discovery and what else and all kinds of stuff.
Can you get us back to the...
Yeah, I'll get us back. We're back. So we're waiting for discovery. We're waiting for stuff to come out. The biggest question in my mind is, why does the judge have a minor's phone number in his phone? Now, they did say that he did law for minors. He also, that he's a friend of the family, I guess. They go way back. Small town. Everyone sounds kind of small town and kind of dresses small town.
Well, the thing too, even the solicitor that's in the courtroom with the judge, his daughters, who are the judge's nieces, and vice versa, like they might have kids in the same age range. I do think it's kind of odd that he had if he indeed had his the sheriff's daughter's phone number. I do think that's a little odd, but
in the midst of a possible sex scandal of some kind, it's cringy, and you don't want it to be what we're all thinking, but it's like it's a straightforward line of reasoning. That's where the rampant speculation comes in. The sheriff acting like he's going to be turned over to someone, or bushwhacked, as they used to say, out in the woods. You have to wonder, like you said, if he's under the influence of drugs, if he's had a psychotic break, if he had an emotional break. These things could all kind of play into it, but it kind of does seem like almost the plot of a novel or something, or like one of the weird stories that I tell at the start of the show. It just seems like one of those things where it's a strange case. But I mean, yeah, again, he had lunch with them, went into his chamber, and you saw the video. It wasn't a duel. It wasn't anything that was fair. If the judge had been carrying a Sig Sauer, we would have just called it, penalties offset, replace downs, and sheriff's the judge now. Like that's how it goes in Kentucky. But I'm excited to find out. I'm excited to find out what comes of this case, and we'll of course be watching, waiting, listening, learning, updating, sharing. Is there another half that we're going to be covering in the near future, or are we just kind of in wait and see mode?
We're kind of in wait and see mode. It depends on popular demand. I would love if people put something in the comments, not in the chat comments, but if people put stuff in the comments that said, "Hey, I'd like to know more about X, Y, and Z," or "I'd like to see you guys cover this," I would love that. There's a whole plethora of there's just a whole table full of stuff that we can talk about in this, a whole smorgasbord, John. The defense attorneys are fascinating, in my opinion. And you alluded to it earlier, that there are no degrees of murder in Kentucky. It's either murder or manslaughter. And the only provision they're talking about here is, look, this is a manslaughter case. This is not a murder case. The state is saying, no, this is a murder case. We just watched it on the thing. Which is why they're making the big push to say, look, this is tip of the iceberg stuff. And obviously he wasn't in his right mind, because that's one of the only caveats that would allow for this to be manslaughter versus murder. And there's also an issue with this being a death penalty case because the person he took out was a public servant. Mm-hmm. So there's all these kind of wrinkles. So I don't know if we're going to cover part 2 next week. I don't know if we're going to cover sprinkles here and there. It'll be like a throwdown episode that we have in the back pocket to talk about it a little more. But I'm telling you, if you like, I don't want to keep it all to myself. If you want to explore, there's a guy, the lawyer, he's got a great podcast. He breaks down the lawsuits and all the other stuff in this case. He's a defense attorney. He's local here in Tampa. I think he's a brilliant guy. He's a great podcaster, and he's got a lot of great information on this case. But I would love to talk more about it. I mean, I just don't know what the people want.
Don't forget too that we've got that public records request open.
Oh, right.
And when that fair ends and the Ferris wheel's finally dismantled, and that information comes into us, we might get some delicious stuff to share. So just, if you're interested in this case and you want to know what's going on, because we don't know the answers. We don't know why this sheriff threw away his life and his career by popping a cap in that judge's ass right there in his chambers. Apparently normally a very sexy and loving place turned into a horrible place of violence. Yeah. It's really sad when you think about it, especially all the potential that could have happened in there. I know that he was happily married to a woman, but I'm just saying it really went a whole different direction.
There could have been children conceived in there.
There could have been, in this day and age, there could have been children conceived in there. Before we go out, I do have a couple of voicemails on the Jim from Florida Comm Center voicemail line. So guys, remember, if you want to be a part of the show, and of course you do, dial 848-COM-911. That's 848-266-6911. By the way, Drew, today I was taking an ambulance call, and I said, "How old is the patient?" And they said 69, and I said, "Nice." But I had my mute on, so they didn't hear that.
God bless you.
But God bless me. So 848-COM-911. That's 848-266-6911. Of course, nice. If you are watching on YouTube before we play that, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, become a member. We have so many wonderful, fun member stuff. We got an episode of Bonus Land coming up next, or the after show as we call it here. And then on Monday, I do a whole other show, which is Renown. Or whatever, it's really renowned. So anyway, you want to not miss that. And then Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving a 5-star rating and review. Abby says it's hard to leave a 5-star rating and review. She says that Apple has made it a chore for you to navigate to the place where you need to go to do that. But we would appreciate you climbing that Everest for us, because for 3 years we have every week put out a piece of entertainment for you. Also on Spotify, make sure you leave a 5-star rating and review. On Instagram, you can follow us What Say Drew, the Comm Center, Drew/truecrime.real. I'm sorry, I can never remember the last one.
Drew Crime Official is just a repository of some of our other Comm Center stuff, but mainly, I mean, I'm going to turn that into something else. It's going to be just, mainly quick hits, like trial updates and stuff like that may not belong on the the comm center
You
itself.
need to be following it, though. You have room. Make sure you're following us on X and Facebook, because I think that exists. I don't know that. I would say that Facebook's probably the least robust place to go to find content for us.
Because you're sending them to the wrong place. I keep.
Well,
telling
I
you
don't
that.
know. I don't have Facebook. I can't even like post anything there. And Dewey, I don't know if he's posting anything or not now that he doesn't work here anymore. So it's pretty much just you. And just a reminder, TikTok canceled. They said no to us, and America said no to them. But I want to do the voicemails because I know I'm about to get off track here. Is that okay?
Go for it.
All right. Let's listen to the voicemails. This from someone who's not Jim from Florida.
Please don't play this on the air.
Oops, I guess I shouldn't play it on the air then. All right, Guy, thank you for saying that right away, so I hit stop. We're going to listen to that as soon as the show's over. So thank you for stopping us. Jim.
Hey, Jon and Drew, Jim from Florida. Hey, the last episode concerning relatives taking 911 calls from family members. I think probably in that hour or so broadcast, you captured everything that dispatchers go through and have to deal with, and the emotional side of their job, as well as the physical side of their job. Hey, keep up the good work, guys. That was one of the best shows yet. Take care. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you for saying
From
that.
Florida.
Drew's really doing a lot of heavy lifting in 2025. I do want to go on the record now, although I should have done this earlier. I am the one that Googled this case.
Yes.
So if this turns out to be real big, like if it's connected to like the Biden crime family or whatever, like I just want to know in here that I'm doing it again, like I did with Sarah Boone last year. I sure can Google them, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Without stealing thunder, John.
Without stealing thunder.
I've been following this case, pretty, I guess, on the fringe. I mean, since kind of minute one, but I was like, there's no nexus to this whatsoever. To the show. And I'm like, it's just, we're going to turn into a trial show. And then you sent me the magic link.
I said, go ahead with this one. Yeah. Okay. So the rule has always been like, we're going to play to our lowest common denominator. Guys, this has a 911 in it. The sheriff technically called 911. I didn't get a chance to analyze anything that he said. I've got this whole thing right here full of notes that's just not going to get read now. But, we want to show the best stories and the best cases. And it's not that 911 is calls are a flimsy pretext. We want to talk about those, and we're always going to take those cases, particularly the good ones. But we're going to also just take any good case. And this is, in my view, it's one to keep our eyes on. And I don't want to come to this too late. I don't want to come after this after like Carly Greer, like everything that happened with that. I wish we'd been in front of that. So I'm just being more proactive, and I want to see how this one plays out.
This trial, John, is going to be the trial of the century. I'm predicting, like we predicted Sarah Boone to be America's next big trial. And guess what? We have a Sarah Boone podcast, like we just made a Sarah Boone podcast of a collection of all the shows we did on this show. And it's eclipsing everything we've done on the Comm Center.
It's destroying all of our other good work. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's very humbling to know that this loon bar that locked her boyfriend in a suitcase is far more famous than all of the other cases that we've done.
In fairness, though, lots of good content out there about it. We might even just go back to that because we liked it. But Lawyer Lee covered some of that, just this attorney, and it was amazing because when she was covering it, people were asking her questions she didn't know the answer to. I'm like, I know the answer to that. And then there was like a body posture, facial movement, emotional recognition expert who was talking about how pissed Sarah was when she was giving her sentencing statements, and how she was trying to assert control, and how she was dismayed all the time. So there's lots of interesting stuff out there. You don't have to exclusively watch the Comm Center with Drew Breezy, but do make sure you are watching it. Make sure you share it with your Aunt Sally. Make sure everyone in your household is downloading those episodes. Make sure the automatic downloads is turned on. Do not have the whole family together listening on one device. Everyone needs to be on their own devices, downloading separately. This is not communism here. Okay. You need to be all doing your own thing. So we appreciate you guys. We're going to be doing an after show here. We'll probably start it early, but it'll be here in a few minutes. Drew's not committed to that, but I am. I'm going to entertain you and take your questions, your answers, your compliments, your hopes and your dreams, possibly a phone call or two. So stay tuned for that on the Comm Center.
I'm going to say one thing to close it out, John. I put on my personal story and on our Comm Center story, and I'm genuine when I say that. Like, I spoke on John's behalf, but I'm pretty sure he feels the same way. Make sure you say a prayer for the people in California, specifically for those telecommunicators that are having to hear people call with their stories of losing homes and losing family members, and the first responders themselves. And when I put that story on our account on the _comm_center on Instagram, I got a response from somebody that just essentially said, "Thank you. Tuesday kicked our ass. Veterans are saying they never experienced what happened Tuesday at our center as a newbie. It was a what the F did we just experience kind of moment. We need the prayers, we need the support, and we appreciate the checking in." So do it, guys. Check in with the people in Southern California that you know, call the Comm Center and tell them that you're thinking about them. Do something for these poor people, because this just, it's not their fault. And this is pretty bad stuff that they're experiencing.
Yeah, we got to remember that Gavin Newsom's out there saying that it's up to locals to figure out. And of course, in Los Angeles, all the fire hydrants have been stolen, and where there's no water, the fire departments are simply giving up and vacating and going elsewhere. But luckily, our recently annexed 51st state is sending down an abundance of water to help out Gavin Newsom take out those problems down there. So I joke about it, but it is a serious and terrible situation when you've got ashes and embers falling from the sky like snow and lighting things on fire, and DEI fire department. That's anyway. All right, guys, we'll catch you next week back here on the Comm Center. I'm going to see you for the after show. We appreciate everybody who was watching. You guys all have a great night. Drew, Dick Ebersol.
Ed Too Tall Jones.
That's one of mine. I love Ed Too Tall Jones.
Roger Staubach.
Yep.
Otis Sistrunk.
Mark Tunai. Nate Newton.
Sam Darnold.